Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're cutting through the noise, really getting into a topic that, well, it touches pretty much every corner of our digital lives, often without us even realizing it. We're talking about the profound and sometimes, unsettling impact of AI on our privacy and the rapidly expanding world of surveillance that comes with it. We've gathered a stack of sources for this deep dive, some cutting-edge research, insightful articles, really comprehensive reports too. Our mission really is to help you get a nuanced grasp on how AI is fundamentally reshaping how our personal information gets collected, used, and maybe even exploited. We'll look at everything from, powerful state actors right down to the everyday corporate stuff that affects your personal space. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, and it's really crucial to frame this right from the start because the sheer scale and the sophistication of AI's ability to collect, analyze, interpret personal data, it's just unprecedented. We're really talking about a paradigm shift here. Privacy isn't just about targeted scrutiny anymore, like someone specifically looking into one person. It's transforming into this, well, pervasive, continuous behavioral monitoring. AI algorithms can now figure out extremely sensitive things about you, predict future actions, and get this, they can even re-identify individuals from data that we all thought was completely anonymized. That changes the game.
Pervasive, continuous behavioral monitoring. Yeah, that phrase definitely sounds unsettling, but beyond just grabbing data, what's the fundamental shift in the power dynamics this creates for us, for individuals?
That's exactly it. That's the core issue.
Yeah.
I mean, look, AI can be a great tool for data protection, right? For finding breaches. But it's a more prominent role, and maybe the more concerning one, has become enabling this pervasive surveillance and data exploitation.
Yeah.
The power shift comes from the sheer volume of data, sure, but also how intelligently it's used to map our lives, often without us fully realizing it. It gives these entities, corporations, or states just disproportionate insight into our behaviors,
Yeah.
even our intentions.
And what really sets this apart based on our sources is that it moves beyond just, isolated investigations. Like you
Yep.
said, we're talking continuous, comprehensive behavioral monitoring. It's not a spotlight on one person anymore. It's more like a constant digital shadow following everyone.
And it's a remarkably detailed shadow. Algorithms can infer all sorts of things, your health, political views, financial stability, often from stuff that seems totally innocuous, like the websites you browse, things you click on, even how fast you type. They can predict future behavior. Are you likely to quit your job? Are you a credit risk? And, like we mentioned, they can piece together supposedly anonymous data to figure out who you are. That makes a lot of traditional privacy protections, well, less effective.
That connects straight to everyday life. Our sources talk a lot about data brokers. These companies apparently collect thousands of data points from websites, apps, your smart devices. They build these profiles that are so rich they claim they can predict future behavior, sometimes knowing individuals as well as close friends. I mean, that's staggering.
It really brings us to this concept of surveillance capitalism.
Mm.
Shoshana Zuboff coined the term, and it perfectly captures this transformation. It's a model where human experience itself, our clicks, our likes, our movements, gets turned into behavioral data. And that data is used for predictive manipulation. It's not just about selling you shoes anymore. It's about influencing your choices. Targeted ads, obviously.
Oh, we all see those.
But also dynamic pricing thinking. Insurance premiums changing based on how you drive, tracked by your phone or car. Or even political manipulation. The Cambridge Analytica scandal is the classic example there. The core idea is our experiences become raw material, fuel for a system designed to predict and ultimately modify our behavior, for profit or sometimes for power.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now and the data you generate every single day just by, living in the digital world? It's a lot to think about. Okay, so if private companies are building these incredibly detailed profiles, what happens when governments get involved? When they access similar data or even mandate its collection on a national scale? Let's zoom out to the state level. The sources paint AI as a transformative force in social control. What does that look like in practice?
Yeah, when we look at the state level, AI becomes a truly powerful tool for social control. It's all about aggregation, pulling together immense data sets from everywhere. Facial recognition cameras, social media feeds, your mobile phone location, sensors and public infrastructure, it all seeds into these massive systems. China's surveillance ecosystem is probably the most cited example, integrating, over 600 million CCTV cameras? With real-time facial recognition, even gait analysis, how you walk. This lets authorities identify people in crowds, track their movements, and link that physical presence to their digital identity. Financial records, social connections, political activities, all tied together. And the automation aspect is key here, isn't it? Unlike old-school surveillance needing human operators watching screens, AI systems can just autonomously flag suspicious behavior or dissenting speech online. They can even assign risk scores to people automatically. Precisely. And China's evolving social credit system really exemplifies this automation. It's not fully national yet, but the pilot programs show the direction. AI centralizes personal data under a single ID number, a unified social credit number, and it uses that data to reward compliance or punish deviation. Things like jaywalking or posting critical comments online, maybe associating with people the state doesn't like. These can lead to real consequences. Lower social benefits, restricted access to loans, maybe you can't buy high-speed rail tickets.
Wow.
It's essentially predictive policing, but applied to society as a whole. AI trying to forecast and deter noncompliance before it even happens.
And it's not always purely government doing this, right? The sources point to a lot of public-private collaboration, like Alibaba's City Brain in Hangzhou. It manages traffic, sure, but that data also feeds state monitoring systems.
Exactly. And companies like Huawei are actively exporting these surveillance systems globally, over 80 countries mentioned in our sources. That raises serious concerns about the spread of authoritarian tech.
It's not just authoritarian states either. We see similar trends, maybe framed differently, in democracies too. Palantir working with U.S. law enforcement and military using sophisticated AI tools.
Yeah, the geopolitical dimension is huge. China positions its model digital authoritarianism as a viable alternative to liberal democracy. And some regimes find that appealing. Meanwhile, you have the European Union taking a much stronger stance. GDPR is all about prioritizing privacy. They're even considering bans on real-time facial recognition in public.
Right.
The U.S., though, is kind of fragmented. No single federal law like GDPR. And we've seen expanded government use of AI for social media surveillance, especially targeting immigrants and visitors. That raises alarms about function creep technology built for one thing gets used for something else entirely.
You know, reading through the material, I found the psychological dimension really fascinating. This idea of the illusion of omnipresence connects back to the Panopticon concept and something called Potemkin AI.
Absolutely. Jeremy Bentham's Panopticon, the prison design, where inmates think they could be watched at any moment, even if they aren't. That uncertainty breeds self-censorship. Modern surveillance states leverage that same psychological principle. The possibility of being watched changes behavior.
Makes sense.
And then Potemkin AI, that's a great term. It describes systems made to look much smarter or more effective than they really are, like a fake village facade. For example, Chinese state media might publicize big successes of facial recognition, making it seem infallible, catching a fugitive in a crowd of thousands, that kind of story, even if, behind the scenes, many systems still rely heavily on human operators or make lots of mistakes. The perception of an all-seeing, all-knowing AI can be a powerful tool for control, sometimes more powerful than the tech itself.
So, okay, state surveillance is one massive piece of this, national, even global scale. But let's bring it back closer to home for many people. What about AI's impact on privacy in our jobs, in our everyday interactions with companies? How's that playing out?
Oh, the corporate AI surveillance side is definitely pressing. And the dangers are quite varied. There are the obvious risks, like data leaks, right?
Yeah.
But also things like model corruption, supply chain attacks. Often because employees might use external AI tools, like ChatGPT, Claude, those sorts of things, without proper security or oversight. They might paste sensitive company data in there.
Ooh, yeah, that's a big one.
Definitely. But beyond those technical risks, you've got these broader issues. Employee distrust, actual privacy violations, algorithmic bias creeping into HR decisions, discriminatory monitoring. It's a minefield.
And our sources talk about this creating a kind of digital panopticon within the workplace, leading to employee dissatisfaction, maybe even resistance, higher turnover rates. It sounds like it really changes the work environment.
It absolutely does. Continuous monitoring, tracking keystrokes, scanning emails, having AI grade your customer service calls, it can induce serious anxiety. It can kill intrinsic motivation. Imagine that call center scenario. An AI grades you strictly on sticking to the script, ignoring the fact you had a really difficult customer you handled with empathy. That feels incredibly unfair and demoralizing.
Yeah, completely ignores the human element.
Exactly. And then there are worries about anti-union surveillance. Software designed to flag keywords like union or organize in internal chats or emails. That directly impacts workers' rights.
So connecting this back to the bigger picture, these corporate AI systems are collecting huge amounts of personal behavioral data. Doesn't that make these companies giant targets for cyber attacks, like Honeypots.
Absolutely. Massive risk factor. Bugs or vulnerabilities in the AI platforms themselves can expose troves of personal data. But the risk we touched on earlier is critical right now. Employees inadvertently feeding sensitive company secrets, customer data, intellectual property into these unregulated third-party generative AI models. Those models might retain the data, it could leak, it could be used to train future versions, huge compliance violations for the company, potentially devastating for customers if their data gets out.
It really makes you think about your own digital footprint at work, doesn't it? Are you truly aware of what data is being collected, how it's being used, or maybe more worryingly, what you might be accidentally sharing through the tools you use every day? Definitely something to be mindful of. Okay, let's shift gears again. Let's dive into something that touches public safety very directly. AI predictive policing. Sounds like sci-fi, maybe, but it's a growing reality in many places.
Yeah, predictive policing. Essentially, it's about using AI algorithms, machine learning, and crunching huge data sets. We're talking historical crime records, geographic info, social media activity, even weather patterns, economic data, all to forecast when and where crimes are likely to happen. And sometimes, controversially, who might be involved either as a potential victim or perpetrator. The idea is to move policing from reactive to proactive.
How does it actually work, though? The sources describe things like predictive mapping, identifying hotspots where more patrols might be needed, and predictive identification assessing someone's risk of being involved in crime, and also temporal forecasting, predicting when crime might spike. We saw examples like Chicago PD's strategic subject list, which tried to identify high-risk individuals using machine learning. Though it's interesting, Kent Police in England had a similar system starting in 2013, but they eventually stopped using it, said it was hard to prove it was actually effective long-term.
Right, and proponents will point to potential benefits. Proactive crime prevention, maybe using police resources more efficiently, getting real-time insights from data, and in theory, maybe even reducing human bias by relying on data. That promise is why it's gained traction in the UK, US, Australia, parts of Europe.
But, and this is a big but in the sources, despite any potential upside, this area is just riddled with significant ethical, legal, and societal challenges. It's definitely not a simple fix.
Oh, far from it. The major risks are really stark. First and foremost, bias and discrimination. This is huge. AI models are trained on historical crime data. But that data often reflects historical policing patterns which have disproportionately targeted marginalized communities.
So the bias is baked in from the start.
Exactly. The algorithm learns and then amplifies those existing biases. Groups like the NAACP have been warning about this loudly. It leads to over-policing the same communities. Second big issue, lack of transparency. Many of these predictive algorithms are proprietary. They're black boxes. It's incredibly hard for the public, researchers, even oversight bodies to understand how they reach their conclusions. That completely undermines accountability.
Makes sense. If you don't know how it works, how can you challenge it?
Precisely. Third, privacy violations. Collecting and analyzing all this data, social media posts, location tracking it poses serious threats to individual privacy and civil liberties. Where's the line? And finally, erosion of public trust. If communities feel they're being unfairly targeted or over-policed based on flawed, biased AI predictions, it just damages police-community relations further. Especially in neighborhoods where trust is already fragile, it creates a vicious cycle. We are seeing some responses, though. The EU's AI Act, for instance, puts restrictions on certain uses of AI in predictive policing. And advocacy groups like Fair Trials are actually pushing for complete bans, arguing the risks are just too inherent and too high.
It really forces you to ask, if these systems are meant to improve public safety, are they actually making things fairer? Or are they just automating and maybe entrenching existing biases in these powerful, often opaque new ways? A critical question. So we've walked through these pretty pervasive risks, these darker objectives of AI concerning privacy and surveillance. It leaves us with the big question, what can we actually do about it? What are the solutions? How can we mitigate these impacts and safeguard our privacy in this rapidly changing world?
Yeah, it's the crucial question. And there's no single silver bullet. It really demands a comprehensive, multi-layered approach. We need to integrate technical safeguards, definitely, but also strong governance frameworks, strict regulatory compliance, and embedding ethical principles right through the entire AI lifecycle. From design to deployment to decommissioning, it's holistic.
Okay, let's unpack some of that. Foundational principles first. Privacy by design and data minimization. What do those actually mean when you're building an AI system?
Right. Privacy by design means you don't just tack privacy on at the end. You build it into the system's architecture right from the start. It's a core requirement, not an afterthought. And data minimization follows from that. It's the principle of only collecting, processing, and storing the absolute minimum amount of data needed for the specific, defined purpose. And you don't keep it forever. Limit retention periods. This fundamentally reduces the risk. If you don't collect it, it can't be breached or misused.
Okay, that makes sense for limiting exposure. But what about protecting people's identities? When you do need the data for analysis, what about anonymization?
Anonymization and related techniques like pseudonymization, using tokens, masking data, encryption, are definitely important tools. They obscure directly identifying information. But, and this is critical, we now know that even data we thought was safely anonymized can sometimes be re-identified by linking it with other data sets, using inference techniques.
It's not foolproof.
Okay, so it's not a perfect solution on its own. Not always. That's why we need to look at more advanced privacy-preserving technologies. These are really exciting. Things like synthetic data, creating artificial data that mimics the statistical patterns of real data, but contains no actual personal information. Great for training AI safely. Or differential privacy. This involves mathematically adding controlled noise to data sets. It allows analysts to get aggregate insights, but makes it impossible to tell if any one specific person's data is in the results. And federated learning. This is really clever. It lets AI models train on data spread across multiple devices like individual smartphones without the raw data ever leaving the device.
Wow, like the AI learns locally.
Exactly. The model updates, not the raw data, get sent back centrally. Huge potential for privacy, especially with sensitive data like health information.
That's genuinely innovative. But let's not forget the basics, right? Just keeping the data secure from hackers and breaches in the first place.
Absolutely fundamental. You need robust security measures. Strong encryption, both for data sitting on servers at rest and data moving across networks in transit. Strict access controls multi-factor authentication. Role-based access, ensuring only the right people can access the systems and data. And then continuous vigilance. Regular security audits, vulnerability scanning, penetration testing to find weaknesses, and constant monitoring systems to detect threats early. It's an ongoing battle.
We talked earlier about the black box problem, especially with things like predictive policing or even hiring algorithms. How do we tackle fairness and accountability when the AI's decision-making is so opaque?
Yeah, this is where algorithmic transparency and bias mitigation come in. It's a huge focus area. We need to push for explainable AI, XAI techniques. These are methods designed to provide understandable insights into why an AI model made a specific prediction or decision, not just spitting out an answer. We also need to integrate bias detection tools, fairness testing, and regular algorithmic audits into the development process, catching biases in the training data or the model's outputs before they cause harm. And fundamentally, it goes back to the data itself. Ensuring training data sets are diverse, representative, and actively vetted for historical biases is absolutely crucial for building fair AI.
So we've got technical fixes, design principles. What about the bigger picture? The legal landscape, the culture within organizations, how did those fit into mitigating risks?
They're essential pillars. Robust governance frameworks within organizations are key, and strict compliance with regulations like GDPR in Europe, CCPA in California, HIRE-MAP-PAR for health data in the U.S., China's PIPL. These set legal baselines. We've also seen initiatives like the White House's Blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights non-binding, but it outlines important principles like notice, agency, protection from unsafe algorithms. Practically, this means things like conducting regular privacy impact assessments before deploying new AI, being transparent with users, getting meaningful consent, giving people the right to opt out of purely automated decisions in many cases, and crucially, comprehensive employee training. You need to build a strong culture of privacy awareness and responsibility throughout the organization. Plus, there are technical solutions emerging that empower individuals more directly. Things like local AI processing using tools like Llama on your own machine or privacy-preserving platforms like Venice.ai. These aim to give you more control over your information, reducing reliance on sending everything to the cloud.
This deep dive has really shown just how profound, how multifaceted the impact of AI on privacy is, from, state-level social control and corporate monitoring right down to predictive policing. But it also highlights that there are ongoing efforts, real work being done to try and strike that balance between pushing technological innovation forward and protecting fundamental human rights.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the current environment, it really does create a risky time for AI-based surveillance. Individual freedoms feel increasingly under pressure, however. It also presents this urgent opportunity, a critical moment for individuals, for organizations, for governments to collectively step up and define the rules, define the normative frameworks for what acceptable AI use looks like, to really shape the future of digital rights. So the final thought maybe is, what role will you play? How will you advocate for or contribute to a more transparent, accountable, and privacy-respecting AI future?
A powerful question indeed, something for all of us to think about. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive today. We really encourage you to keep exploring these critical topics. Stay informed. We'll see you next time.